Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
My mom passed away a couple of years ago after a long battle with cancer. During her final weeks, she gave me her favorite necklace, a delicate gold chain with a small sapphire pendant that belonged to my grandmother before her. It's not worth a fortune, maybe a few $100s, but to me it's priceless. My mom told me she wanted me to have something beautiful to remember her by, and that someday I could pass it down to my own daughter. I don't wear it every single day because I'm terrified of losing it or damaging it, but on special occasions, difficult days when I miss her, or just random days when I want to feel close to her, I'll put it on. Today was one of those days. I had a big presentation to give to our biggest client, and wearing my mom's necklace always makes me feel more confident and like she's with me somehow. The presentation went really well, and I was feeling good when I headed back to my desk. That's when Karen from the accounts department approached me. She works in a completely different department, so we barely interact except for the occasional hello in the break room. Karen complimented my necklace and asked where I got it. I thanked her and explained that it was my mother's. Without missing a beat, she told me it would be perfect for her date that night and asked if she could borrow it. I was so taken aback by the audacity that I actually laughed a little. I told her no, that I don't lend out my jewelry, especially not this piece because it has sentimental value. She kept pushing, saying she would be super careful with it for just one night. I repeated that I said no, that it was my mother's and very important to me. That's when she rolled her eyes at me like I was being completely unreasonable. She pointed out that it's not like I wear it every day, and that she's worked here for 2 years and only seen me wear it maybe 5 times. I told her that didn't matter, that it was mine, belonged to my mother, and I wasn't lending it to anyone. She called me selfish and said it was just sitting in my jewelry box most of the time doing nothing. She claimed that if I let her wear it, at least someone would actually appreciate it. The nerve of this woman to tell me I don't appreciate my own mother's necklace was beyond belief. I asked her if she was serious, calling me selfish because I wouldn't let her borrow my dead mother's jewelry. She said that when I put it that way, I made it sound all dramatic, and that it was just a necklace. At this point, our conversation was getting loud enough that some of our co-workers were starting to stare. I could see my friend from HR, who sits a few desks away, watching with concern. I told her it wasn't just a necklace to me, and even if it was, I still wouldn't have to lend it to her since we barely knew each other. She said fine, but not to expect her to do me any favors around here when I couldn't even help out a co-worker with something so small. I replied that I would somehow manage to live with that disappointment. She walked off, but I could tell this wasn't over. Karen had that look on her face that said she was plotting something. Sure enough, about an hour later, she came back with our supervisor, who looked extremely uncomfortable. My supervisor apologized for bothering me, but said Karen mentioned there was some kind of dispute about jewelry. Karen explained that I had this necklace that would be perfect for her date, but I was refusing to let her borrow it, even though I barely ever wore it. Our supervisor said he wasn't sure why this was a workplace issue. I clarified that it wasn't one. She had asked to borrow my personal jewelry. I said no, and now she was having a tantrum about it. Karen protested that she wasn't having a tantrum, just thought it was really unfair that I was being so stingy about something I barely used. My supervisor looked like he wanted to be anywhere else in the world. He told us he couldn't force anyone to lend their personal belongings to co-workers, and this really wasn't something that should involve management. Karen insisted I was being completely unreasonable. That's when my friend from HR decided to join the conversation. She pointed out to Karen that she was asking someone to lend their deceased mother's jewelry and then calling them unreasonable when they said no, asking if she realized how that sounded. Karen went red. She claimed I didn't tell her it was from my dead mother when she first asked. I corrected her, saying I told her it was my mother's right away, and even if I hadn't, no means no regardless of the reason. My HR friend suggested Karen should probably drop this and get back to work. Karen said this was ridiculous, and everyone was being so dramatic over a stupid piece of jewelry. That was the final straw for me. I told her maybe I should call up my dead mother and ask her if it was okay if some entitled co-worker who thinks I'm selfish could borrow her precious necklace for a Tinder date. The whole section of the office went dead quiet. Karen's mouth fell open. My HR friend told Karen to come to her office immediately. When they walked away, I could hear my HR friend saying something about appropriate workplace behavior and respecting boundaries. Karen tried to argue but was quickly shut down. Later that afternoon, Karen came back to my desk looking like she'd been crying. She said she was supposed to apologize for her behavior today. I said, okay. She apologized for calling me selfish and involving our supervisor. I waited and said, and. She then apologized for not respecting my boundaries about my personal property. It was clearly a scripted apology from HR, but I could tell she was genuinely embarrassed. Word had gotten around the office about what happened, and people were looking at her differently. I thanked her for the apology and said I accepted it. She asked if we were good. I told her we were fine long. She understood that no means no and stopped asking to borrow my things. She nodded and walked away quickly. I found out later from my HR friend that Karen had been given a formal warning about harassment and creating a hostile work environment. Apparently, this wasn't the first time she'd pressured co-workers for their personal belongings. Her big date that night ended with a guy standing her up. My partner and I have been together for almost 10 years now. I thought I had a decent relationship with his family. Sure, they could be a bit much sometimes, but nothing too crazy. My stomach has been sensitive since I was a kid. I can only eat chicken and other bird meat, no beef or pork, and seafood makes me physically sick no matter how it's prepared. I also can't handle too much dairy or really oily foods without spending the next day in agony. It's not a choice thing, it's just how my body works. My partner's family has known about this for years. We've had countless meals together, barbecues, holiday dinners, you name it. They've always accommodated me before, or at least didn't make it weird when I brought my own food to share. When they invited us to a barbecue at their place last week, I did what I always do. My partner and I went shopping and bought 3 full bags of food, chicken pieces, wings, asparagus, potatoes, corn on the cob, and some other vegetables. Some of it was specifically for me because of my restrictions, but most of it was to share with everyone. That's just normal here in the UK. The drive to their place takes about 2 hours, so we were staying overnight. When we arrived, I helped carry all our food to the kitchen and explained to my father-in-law which items were which. He nodded and said he'd handle everything on his fancy new grill. He's very particular about that thing, spent a fortune on it, and won't let anyone else near it. The backyard was packed with family. The kids ranged from actual teenagers to adults in their 30s, plus some of the little ones running around with the dogs. I ended up in the far corner of the garden playing football with some of them while the adults chatted and drank. After about an hour of running around, I was getting pretty hungry. I walked over to where all the food was set out on the long table, scanning for the chicken and vegetables we'd brought. Nothing. I looked again, thinking maybe they were on a different part of the table. Still nothing. I found my father-in-law by the grill flipping some beef burgers. I asked him where the chicken and vegetables were that we'd brought. He casually told me that all of it was gone because the family had gotten to it first. I stared at him for a second, not quite processing what he'd said. I explained that the food was meant for us too, and that I couldn't eat any of the other stuff on the table. He just shrugged and gestured toward the table loaded with beef, pork, and other things that would make me sick. He dismissed me by saying there was plenty of food available and that I was just being picky. That's when my mother-in-law walked over, clearly having overheard our conversation. She told me I needed to stop being such a fussy eater because there was loads of food available. I tried to explain that I wasn't being fussy and that I physically couldn't eat beef or pork without getting sick. I reminded her that she'd known this for almost 10 years. She called my condition ridiculous and told me to just eat around the meat. My father-in-law agreed and said I was making a big deal out of everything. I felt my face getting hot. I looked around at all the leftovers. There was enough food to fill their entire fridge, Yet somehow, all of our chicken had mysteriously disappeared within the first hour. I told them fine. I would just order something for myself then. I walked away and called the local takeaway place that I knew wouldn't upset my stomach. 20 minutes later, my food arrived. That's when things got really ugly. My mother-in-law asked if I was serious and accused me of ordering food without asking if anyone else wanted anything. I explained that I had asked for the food we brought and was told it was gone, so what was I supposed to do? Starve? My father-in-law called my behavior incredibly rude and selfish. Then some of the older kids, and I'm talking about adults in their 20s and 30s here, started chiming in. One cousin asked why I didn't order for all of them and called me inconsiderate. Another cousin complained that now they wanted takeaway too, but it was too late. I told them they were all adults and if they wanted takeaway, they could have ordered their own. I pointed out that there was literally tons of food available that they could all eat. My mother-in-law told me not to dare talk to them like that and called me a spoiled princess. My father-in-law agreed and said my behavior was absolutely ridiculous. My partner finally appeared, looking uncomfortable. He asked what was going on. His mother immediately told him that I had ordered food just for myself and refused to get anything for the kids, claiming they were all upset now. I looked at these so-called kids, grown adults who were perfectly capable of using a phone to order their own food if they wanted it. I explained that I had brought 3 bags of food to share, that his father said it was all eaten by other people before I could have any, and that I had dietary restrictions his family had known about for a decade. I asked what exactly I was supposed to do. My partner suggested that maybe I could have just made do with what was available. I stared at him. My own partner was siding with them. I asked him if he really expected me to make do with food that would make me violently ill. The whole family started talking at once, calling me dramatic, selfish, and ungrateful. I grabbed my takeaway and ate it in the car, texting my best friend about the whole situation. My friend happens to work in catering and knows food costs. She asked me to estimate how much chicken and vegetables we'd brought. When I told her, she nearly choked and said that was easily 60 to 80 pounds worth of food. She asked how many people were there, and when I said about 15 adults and 5 kids, she told me it wasn't normal for them to eat all of my food first. Someone had made a deliberate choice there. The next morning at breakfast, my mother-in-law was still making snide comments about my dramatic behavior and how I had ruined the barbecue for everyone. That's when I'd had enough. I asked her how much she thought the food my partner and I brought had cost. She guessed maybe 20 pounds. I told her to try 80 pounds instead. I explained that we had brought 3 full bags of food specifically so I could eat, and so there would be plenty to share. Within 1 hour, every single piece of food I could safely eat had been consumed by other people. When I pointed this out, I was called picky and told to just eat food that makes me sick. My father-in-law dismissed me again, saying it was just food and I should stop being so dramatic. I agreed with him that it was just food, so next time I wouldn't bring any. I told them they could provide their own food for their own barbecue. My mother-in-law called me ridiculous. I told her I wasn't being ridiculous, I was being practical. Since my dietary needs were apparently too difficult to accommodate after 10 years and bringing my own food to share was somehow selfish, I would just eat before coming to their events. Problem solved. I'm a maintenance supervisor for a small apartment complex downtown. Been doing this job for about 8 years now, so I know my way around tools and home repairs pretty well. My tenants call me when their toilets won't flush, their outlets spark, or their pipes leak. It's honest work, and I take pride in helping people solve their problems without getting ripped off by overpriced contractors. That Tuesday afternoon, I was picking up some replacement parts for a busted garbage disposal in Unit 4B. Nothing fancy, just needed a mounting assembly and some plumber's putty. The hardware store was pretty quiet, just me, a few other customers, and the usual staff wandering around in their red vests. I was in the plumbing aisle when I heard this woman's voice getting louder and more aggressive near the electrical section. She was talking to this older gentleman who looked completely overwhelmed and confused. The woman was telling him he needed to replace his entire electrical panel and that it was the only way to fix his flickering lights. She kept insisting that the cheap outlets wouldn't do anything for him. The old man looked worried and kept shaking his head. He explained that an electrician had told him it was probably just a loose connection in one room and had quoted him $50 to fix it. The woman got more forceful, claiming that the electrician was trying to scam him. She said he needed a complete rewire and bragged about spending $15,000 fixing the same problem in her own home. She warned him not to be cheap about electrical work. I winced. The poor guy's hands were shaking when he looked at the expensive electrical panels she was pointing to. Something told me to mind my own business, but I've seen too many elderly people get taken advantage of in situations like this. I walked over and cleared my throat. I told him I overheard and explained to the old man that flickering lights are usually caused by loose connections or overloaded circuits. I suggested he should have that electrician check the simple stuff first before spending thousands on a new panel. The old man's face lit up with relief. He mentioned that the lights only flickered in his bedroom when he turned on the space heater. I nodded and told him that sounded like he was overloading that circuit. I explained that he probably just needed to plug the heater into a different outlet on another circuit, which would be a super easy fix. That's when the woman turned her attention to me and I immediately regretted getting involved. She had that look, you know the one, like she was personally offended that I existed. She demanded to know who had asked for my opinion and claimed she'd been dealing with electrical problems for 20 years. She insisted that the man needed professional work done, not amateur advice from someone like me. I tried to stay calm and told her I wasn't trying to start anything. I just thought the old man should try the simple solutions before spending his life savings. She got more aggressive and asked if I was even certified or had a license. She bragged about having a degree in electrical engineering. I seriously doubted that, but I tried to stay calm. I told her I was a licensed maintenance supervisor and dealt with electrical issues in residential buildings every week. The old man started backing away from both of us, clearly uncomfortable with the escalating tension. He mumbled something about going home to think about it. The woman wouldn't let up. She told him not to let me confuse him and insisted he needed proper electrical work done by real professionals, not some building janitor. That stung, but I kept my voice level. I urged the old man to get a second opinion before making any major decisions and assured him that any licensed electrician would tell him the same thing I just did. The woman was getting redder in the face by the second. She screamed that I was going to get someone killed with my dangerous advice and demanded I stop interfering with people who actually knew what they were talking about. I replied that I wasn't interfering but trying to help someone avoid getting ripped off. That's when things went completely sideways. The woman walked over to the tool display and grabbed one of those screw guns they had set up for demonstration. I thought she was just being dramatic, maybe trying to intimidate me, but then she pointed it at me. She threatened that maybe this would teach me to mind my own business. I put my hands up thinking she was just trying to scare me. I told her to calm down and try to de-escalate the situation. She pulled the trigger. The screw shot out and hit me right in the thigh. The pain was immediate and sharp like someone had stabbed me with a nail. I went down hard, grabbing my leg while blood started seeping through my jeans. I yelled out in pain, asking what was wrong with her. I looked up from the floor and she was pointing that thing right at my head. Her face was twisted with rage, finger on the trigger again. She snarled that this was what happened when people didn't know their place. That's when one of the store employees came running from behind her. He must have seen the whole thing from the next aisle over. This big guy in a red vest tackled her from the side and they both went crashing into a shelf full of paint cans. The noise was incredible. The screw gun went flying and clattered across the floor. The woman was screaming and thrashing under the employee, calling him every name in the book. The employee shouted for someone to call 911 and announced that the lady had just shot a customer. Other customers started gathering around, pulling out their phones. The old man was still standing there in shock, staring at the blood on my leg. I tried to reassure everyone that I was okay and that it wasn't deep, just a graze. But honestly, I was shaking. If that employee hadn't tackled her when he did, who knows what would have happened. The police showed up within 5 minutes, along with the paramedics. The woman kept screaming about how I had assaulted her and that she was defending herself. The security cameras told a different story though. The officer told her that they had the whole incident on video and placed her under arrest for assault with a deadly weapon. She protested loudly, calling the arrest ridiculous and claiming I had been harassing customers. She kept yelling about her rights. While they put the handcuffs on her, she was still yelling about lawsuits and discrimination. The paramedic cleaned up my leg and said I was lucky. The screw had just grazed the surface. No stitches needed, just a bandage and some antiseptic. The store manager came over while I was getting patched up. He apologized for what had happened and assured me they were pressing charges and banning her from all their locations. He also offered to cover my purchase for the day. The old man approached me when I was getting ready to leave. He thanked me for trying to help him and told me he had called his electrician. I had been right, it was just a loose wire that cost him $40 to fix. I told him I was glad it worked out for him. 3 weeks later, I got a call from the prosecutor's office. The woman had been charged with assault with a deadly weapon and reckless endangerment. Apparently, she had a history of similar outbursts at other stores around town. The security footage from the hardware store was pretty damning evidence. She ended up pleading guilty and got 6 months in jail plus anger management classes. She also had to pay my medical bills, even though they were minimal. I'm a stepdad to a wonderful young man who's been dating this sweet girl for about 2 years now. She has become like family to us, always thinking of others and trying to make everyone happy. We've been planning this vacation for months. My wife and I wanted to spend quality time with my stepson and his girlfriend, and everything had been going perfectly until we hit this little tourist trap of a town. You know the type, overpriced everything. But the kids were excited to find souvenirs for everyone back home. His girlfriend had made a whole list before we left. She wanted to get something special for her parents, her 2 younger siblings, and even her grandmother. She'd been saving up her part-time job money for weeks, carefully budgeting so she could get something nice for each person. That's just the kind of person she is, always putting others first. We walked into this cluttered souvenir shop that had everything from keychains to t-shirts with cheesy vacation sayings. The place was packed with other tourists, all bumping into each other in the narrow aisles. My stepson and his girlfriend went straight to the clothing section while my wife and I browsed the postcards nearby. His girlfriend spent about 10 minutes going through the t-shirt rack, checking sizes and prices. She finally found this perfect blue shirt with a lighthouse design that she knew her mom would love. It was exactly her mom's size, medium, and within her budget. She was holding it up, showing it to my stepson with this big smile on her face. That's when this woman appeared out of nowhere. She was probably in her 40s and walked right up to his girlfriend without any greeting or excuse me. The woman demanded to know what size shirt his girlfriend was holding. His girlfriend looked confused but politely told her it was a medium and asked why she wanted to know. The woman then boldly told her to hand over the shirt because she liked the color and wanted to buy it herself. My stepson stepped closer to his girlfriend and I could see his jaw clench. He's usually pretty laid back, but he doesn't tolerate people being rude to the people he cares about. My stepson politely told the woman that his girlfriend was planning to purchase that shirt. The entitled woman completely ignored him and kept staring at his girlfriend like she was expecting her to just hand over the shirt. The woman said she didn't care what his girlfriend was planning and insisted she wanted the shirt because she saw it first. My stepson corrected her, pointing out that they'd been standing there for 10 minutes and his girlfriend had just found it on the rack. The woman's voice got louder when she demanded the shirt again, saying she liked the color and was going to buy it. Other customers were starting to stare at the scene she was making. My stepson quietly told his girlfriend to go pay for the shirt and positioned himself between her and this demanding woman, not aggressively, but clearly protective. I felt proud watching him handle the situation so maturely. When they walked toward the checkout counter, the entitled woman followed them, getting more agitated by the second. His girlfriend was clutching the shirt tightly, clearly rattled by the whole thing. She'd never dealt with someone so pushy before. At the checkout counter, things got even worse. While his girlfriend was digging through her purse for her carefully counted money, the woman started making a scene. She loudly accused the kids of stealing the shirt from her and claimed she had it first. She demanded that the cashier make them give it back to her. The teenage cashier looked completely overwhelmed. Thankfully, an older employee, who seemed to be the manager, walked over to see what the commotion was about. The manager asked what the problem was. The entitled woman told him that the kids had taken the shirt she was going to buy and demanded he make them give it to her. The manager was incredibly patient and offered to find her another shirt in the same size and color, but the woman wasn't having any of it. She insisted she didn't want another one and wanted that specific shirt, the one she claimed they had stolen from her. My stepson explained that his girlfriend hadn't stolen anything and that they'd been browsing for 15 minutes before finding the shirt on the rack. I decided to step in at this point because the situation was getting ridiculous. I told the manager that I'd been watching them browse and that no one had taken anything from the woman. She whipped around to look at me and angrily told me to mind my own business, saying it didn't concern me. The manager told her she needed to take a deep breath or he would have to ask her to leave the store. But the woman was beyond reason at this point. She was practically shaking with anger that she wasn't getting her way. She ranted about how ridiculous the situation was and insisted that the customer is always right. She demanded to speak to the manager, not realizing she was already talking to him. He told her that he was the manager and repeated that if she couldn't calm down, she needed to leave. The woman finally gave up, declaring that she didn't want to shop in this dump anyway. She stormed out of the store talking loudly about terrible customer service and threatening to leave bad reviews everywhere. The other customers who had been watching actually started clapping once she left. The manager apologized for the incident and commented that some people just can't handle being told no. His girlfriend finally completed her purchase, though her hands were still shaking a little from the confrontation. My stepson kept his arm around her shoulders when we left the store. On the walk back to our car, his girlfriend was quiet for a while. Then she looked up at my stepson with this grateful expression and thanked him for standing up for her. She admitted she'd never had anyone be that mean to her before. He simply told her that nobody gets to treat her like that. Watching the whole thing unfold made me realize how much my stepson has grown up. I'm a foreman for a mid-sized construction company, and safety is literally my job. I spend half my day making sure my crew doesn't do anything that'll get them hurt or killed. So when I see someone completely ignore basic safety measures, it gets under my skin real quick. I was at Home Depot picking up some electrical supplies for a job site. We were running behind on a commercial project and I needed to grab some specialty light fixtures that our usual supplier didn't have in stock. Nothing fancy, just some industrial overhead lights, but they had to meet specific code requirements for the building we're working on. I was walking through the lighting section when I saw one of the store workers driving one of those mini forklifts down the aisle. You know the ones, they're smaller than the big warehouse forklifts, but still plenty dangerous if you're not careful around them. The guy was heading toward some boxes stacked way up high on the shelves. The worker seemed to know what he was doing. He positioned the forklift, then got off and walked to both ends of the aisle. He pulled out those metal barrier fences they used to block off areas and set them up at each entrance to the aisle. Smart move. I watched him double-check that the barriers were secure, then he got back on the forklift and started raising the arms up to reach a heavy box on the top shelf. I was standing at the end cap of the next aisle over, comparing prices on some electrical boxes, when I saw her coming. This woman, probably in her 40s, walked right up to one of the barriers like it was nothing more than a minor inconvenience. She didn't even pause to think about why it might be there. I watched as she just grabbed the barrier and swung it open like she was opening a gate to her backyard. No hesitation whatsoever. She strolled right into the aisle where this guy was operating heavy machinery 20 feet above her head. The forklift operator was focused on his work, carefully maneuvering this massive box that had to weigh at least 200 pounds. The hydraulic arms were fully extended, and he was trying to lower it down safely. Meanwhile, this woman just wandered underneath the whole operation like she was browsing at a farmer's market. I started walking toward the aisle, thinking maybe I should say something, but she was already halfway through. She stopped right under the forklift arms and started examining some light switches on the shelf. The worker up above still hadn't noticed her because he was concentrating on not dropping a quarter-ton box on anyone's head. After what felt like forever, but was probably only 30 seconds, she continued walking. I thought maybe she'd learned her lesson when she reached the other end of the aisle and saw the second barrier. Surely she'd realize why these things were put up in the first place. Nope. She did the exact same thing at the other end. Just pushed the barrier aside like it was a cobweb and walked right through. Didn't even bother to close either barrier behind her. Just left them both wide open and kept walking like nothing had happened. That's when the worker finally noticed what had happened. He was lowering the box onto a cart and looked around to see both his safety barriers pushed open. His face went completely pale when he realized someone had walked right through his work zone while he was operating the lift. The worker started cursing, asking out loud if someone had really just walked through his safety zone. He was genuinely shaken up. This wasn't some teenager goofing around, this was a professional who takes safety seriously, and someone had just put themselves and him at risk for no good reason. I walked over to him when he was climbing down from the forklift. I told him that some lady had just strolled right through like his barriers were decorations. He said he hadn't even seen her because he was watching the load. He was clearly upset, mentioning how that box could have slipped and killed someone. I felt bad for the guy. In construction, when someone gets hurt because of safety violations, it's not just the injured person who suffers. The operator has to live with that too, even when it's not their fault. We both looked around to see where the woman had gone, but she disappeared into the maze of aisles. Just another customer going about her day, probably completely unaware that she'd nearly gotten herself crushed. The worker started setting the barriers back up, checking them twice this time. He said these barriers weren't there for decoration and that someone could die. I agreed with him, saying that some people just think rules don't apply to them. I helped him secure the barriers properly and went back to shopping for my electrical supplies. But I couldn't stop thinking about what I'd witnessed. In my line of work, I've seen what happens when people ignore safety protocols. I've been to job sites where someone got hurt because they thought they could take a shortcut or didn't want to be inconvenienced by safety measures. The thing that really got to me wasn't just that she ignored the barriers, it was how easily she did it. Like the idea that they might be there for a reason never even crossed her mind. She saw an obstacle to her shopping convenience and just removed it, whatever might happen. About 10 minutes later, I was checking out at the register when I heard a commotion from the lighting section. Apparently, another customer had tried to walk through the same worker's safety zone, but this time, he was ready for it. The cashier mentioned that it sounded like Jake was having another day. I said that people just don't respect safety barriers. The cashier told me I'd be amazed how often this happens. She explained that they've had people move wet floor signs, duck under caution tape, and ignore spill markers. She said last month someone climbed over a barrier to get to a sale item and knocked over a whole display. When I was loading my purchases into my truck, I thought about how this attitude probably extends beyond just store safety. These are the same people who probably don't wear seatbelts, ignore construction zone speed limits, and walk into restricted areas because the rules are just suggestions to them. What really bothers me is that her actions could have gotten the worker fired if something had gone wrong. Companies don't mess around with safety violations, even when they're caused by customers. That guy was just trying to do his job safely, and some entitled woman nearly ruined his day, his career, and possibly his life, all because she couldn't be bothered to walk around to the next aisle. 2 hours later, I'm still amazed by what I witnessed. I drove back to my job site thinking about how many close calls like this probably happen every day, with people who just consider safety measures to be inconveniences. No matter how many precautions stores put in place, there's always going to be someone like Karen who thinks the rules don't apply to her. I just hope that worker doesn't have to deal with too many more people like that, because honestly, it's a miracle nobody got seriously hurt today. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.